This is Tashi. Tashi. Yeah. Say hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. I'm Tashi. Tashi means peace in Tibetan. He is a pretty peaceful cat.
Morning.
Morning, Bill. How are you this morning?
Okay. Um, I, I was foolish yesterday. We talked about my coming on Wednesday and possibly staying a bit later, but the bridge is closed until 11 o'clock on Wednesday.
Ah, are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. Yeah. I don't know what I was thinking. Obviously, I wasn't thinking. So,
Well, obviously, I hadn't uh, read that yet.
yeah.
Oh, gosh. Well, woo. Well, you may have to just make a visit sometime.
Okay.
Excuse me, I have Adam calling here.
Sure.
Morning, Adam. I've been better, but I'm okay. Okay. Oh, uh-huh. Sure it does. Okay. All right. Well, yeah. No, no, I understand. I hear you. All right. We'll talk later. All right. Good luck. Bye.
Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, no.
So we have a bill class again today.
No, we do. Wow.
Um, Joanne has her annual land trust meeting, and she's overwhelmed with calls and messages. And Adam, rather suddenly, has been promoted to a manager
Oh,
because another manager was forced to leave because he wasn't doing what he ought to be doing. And Adam got thrust into this position. He sounds a bit overwhelmed.
Wow. Wow. Is he willingly thrust, do you think? Or
um, I I really don't know. He said he'd call me later this afternoon and we'd talk.
yeah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, he seems like a guy who doesn't aspire to be put in positions that are too crazy.
I think you're right, although he had taken this assistant manager position in order to, because of the money, so that he could pay off his school loan.
Well,
yeah.
there's that.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think he has accomplished that now, but all of a sudden he has been doing, I know he's been doing an extremely good job, and they have appreciated what he's done, and I think, this probably was an inevitable thing unless he didn't choose to remain in the managerial area.
Yeah.
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 And he was thinking about going back to nursing, I think, at one point. So,
I'm hearing demands of a cat. I need to go open a door. I'll be right back.
okay. Boy, am I familiar with that. As a matter of fact, if you look at the very beginning of the video, you will get to see Tashi again.
Yes. Okay.
So, Bill, I'm sad to hear this, and there's nothing either one of us can do about it, really, except
Right, right. I'll send you. I'll send you the projected calendar.
Yeah. The only thing I suppose is we might talk to Jeff and see if it's possible to move the class to another day
Hmm.
or time.
In a general way, what happens? We're very near the end of the form. Then is your plan to go back through it and fine tune?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we've sort of just
This is the first layer.
learning the physical movement is
Yeah. Okay.
that's beginning.
Yeah.
And I mean, all the things, I mean, we've talked about a number of things, but not in being really specific. And I really would like to go back with you guys and really refine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's, let me tell you, how long have I been working on this style? Jay taught it to me. Well, I would have to say I've been working on this style for probably at least 18 years.
Mm.
And I think maybe I'm beginning to scratch the surface.
Are you talking about Wu or
Yes.
God?
Yeah. Yeah.
Woo. So, and one of the things certainly for you, Bill Nagel, is that since you're doing gods, you are learning elements that should be included in that form.
Yeah, yeah.
But there are a number of things you need to do first.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Bill, the the difficulty is that the Goodspeed Swing Bridge is going to be permanently closed, completely closed, from Sunday evenings to late Wednesday mornings through October. So,
Oh, really? I'll have to remember that we have plans to go to a Goodspeed place sometime in September.
yeah.
I think we already have tickets.
well, don't plan to cross the bridge.
Yeah, we'll have to approach from the other side.
Yeah.
Well, if it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you may, that may
Be
not
all
be a
right.
problem, so.
Yeah.
You might be slowed down, but okay. Well, oh, I didn't get my tingle shot. Excuse me. Questions? Comments? Thoughts?
I haven't gotten as much practice in as I had hoped, and it's the idea of extending the elbows, as we talked in three, is an interesting feeling. It's a good feeling, but I hadn't done it before at all. So,
Yeah, that changed three. Yeah, we said it during the lesson last week. It sort of revolutionized three another time, yet another time.
yeah.
But
Yeah, well, it
and
may
maybe
not be the
that'll happen
last
again.
time, Bill.
It won't be the last time. I did not assume we had arrived. If one ever arrives anywhere.
I think this is just something that exists with all of these elements in our study. I was saying in Bill's class yesterday that at least I think it was your class, or no, I think it was the afternoon class. I was remembering that when I was learning the Yang long form from Master Joe, that the first day I rushed out in the lunch break and started practicing madly what we had worked on in the morning. And one of his longtime students walked up to me and said, "I really wouldn't bother about that if I were you." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Oh, he'll change it before this afternoon." So I think continual transition is, but both from the standpoint of my growth and yours. You find that you will change subtly what you're doing because of continuing to grow.
Well, obviously, you couldn't possibly have incorporated everything that we've learned so far from the start has to be done in stages.
Yeah.
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 And recognizing that I don't expect, and you should not expect from yourselves, that you're going to accomplish it within the time that we actually are holding this class.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ongoing process. Um,
I think, yeah, but practice is, I never have a practice on my own where it feels like I'm consistent through for any one posture through all of the,
Yeah.
all of the repetitions on the times I do 20, or if I do my shorter 10 or thing, that it's always an exploring. It's not it's not a, okay, I'm doing this exactly how I know how to do it at this moment. Yeah. but the exploring the, with the elbows and thinking what for 3, and that way of extending makes it a much smaller extension, and in a way it's allowed me to think more about what my spine is doing during that extension.
Good.
And I think it's, I wouldn't say easy, but doing the twisting and having the twisting stop and change at the transition point, go smoothly from in to out or out to in at a transition point, works fairly well. But taking the C curve gradually from an expanded extension to back into the, expanding the back into the C curve, that doing that in a gradual rate through the whole thing is something that's elusive to me. It's more of a, not exactly snapping it in, but but it's something that finishes too quickly or doesn't extend fully. I get to the end of extending and it's still there. So
Absolutely. I mean, that's, yes, that will take a while. It does. I believe me, I have been through those stages, certainly that you're describing, because I went through that, into the C curve, out of the C curve.
yeah.
But eventually as you begin to coordinate all of the elements together, even the C curve will begin to flow with those gradual changes. But you're absolutely right. It takes time and practice. The nice thing for me, in a way, both the Wu style and God's, I'm finding just the pleasure that I can keep practicing this for the rest of my life, and I will never run out of things to focus on or ways to improve and grow. But it gets better all the time. So I hope in a way that's encouraging.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
So, any other questions at all about the way we looked at 3 last time, or did you think at all about incorporating that awareness into the other movements?
Not in a specific way, but paying attention. I think it's all paying attention to a piece until it becomes part of you, and then focus the conscious mind intent at another place. I did thinking about what's leading the movement, and we keep switching that from one thing to another.
Yep.
I think having the elbows leading that extension, I was transferring that to trying to let my spine extension lead it, and not to change the elbows, but to just then thinking about where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So playing with different places, I mean, I know we've done things with our fingers leading in other forms, and with the twisting leading, and it's very, for me, it's useful to sort of switch leaders as you go on.
Well, indeed, I think you're correct, because that's certainly one approach to developing your awareness of that whole concept of the leader and follower. And gradually that will change to where you have only a very few leaders and depending on the posture and what you're trying to accomplish with it, that can change. But you're right. It is possible, and that part of the reason why I think why Bruce has taught us to use multiple elements to lead from time to time is really to refine our ability to focus on a specific leader, and to be able to change that if we need to, or the movement requires it. It would be nice if we could say, this is the leader of everything. But that isn't necessarily the way it is, because there are various elements involved, and depending on the day and the energy and what you're endeavoring to do with it, it can change. So it's all a matter of developing flexible ability to incorporate all of these 16 Neigong in every movement. Easier said than done.
Yeah. I have to go back and reread the 16 Neigong, which I know we gave sort of short treatment of right at the very beginning of the class.
Yeah. So, anything other for you, Bill Nagel?
Well, I was thinking while you and Bill were talking, and among the various weaknesses, probably the most striking to me is that I have trouble connecting with my spine. I have become aware of this, that, and the other thing, but not so much the spine. And I don't think that's anything anybody can solve in 2 seconds, but that's just a comment,
Unfortunately, we're going into a time when I'm not going to see you very much, because I'm sorry you didn't say that
yesterday.
yesterday when I was put my hands on you and move you, because I think sometimes really you having somebody touch you, having a teacher touch you and say, now this is where you need to move this. And you want, hopefully, to feel this result from doing that. And I think with the spine, it is something that you have to feel, because it's obviously very much there. We wouldn't be standing vertically without it.
Right.
Uh, um, but it's not something that we can see. I mean, we can see pictures of it or see a skeleton and have an idea what the spine looks like. But that's a visualization. And so you have to actually get a concrete feel of what it feels like to feel it move.
Yeah.
Feel.
I will say that I am aware. I do feel it move in the spine stretch. I just haven't been able to translate that into the form or gods or anything else effectively. So
That's interesting. Well, that's good, because then the spine stretch has done part of what it's supposed to be doing, which is helping to make you aware of the spine and how it does move, how you can move it. The translation here is real, between the two is really the only real difference is the movement. In the C curve, or bend the bow, the movement is happening all at once, whereas in the spine stretch, it's going in sequence from bottom to top.
right.
But ultimately the awareness of the movement of particularly the top and the bottom of the spine, the separation of the vertebra, those are the same feelings. They're just happening simultaneously rather than sequentially. So, I don't. Sometime when you can come over for a while, we'll play with that.
Okay. Good.
I understand. I hear what you're saying. That was one that I didn't have a particularly difficult time with, so I can't say that was one that really hung me up, but others have. So, but we'll work on it sometime when.
Okay.
So I was going to look at another concept in Qigong, which is ideally eventually very present in gods, is threading. And threading is, if you have something in one place, in opening and closing, dissolving a gate, an energy point, what an organ is putting out, what a gland is putting out, what the brain center is putting out, what a bone is putting out, whatever something is putting out, that is directly connected to another thing, a joint, tendon, bone, whatever it is inside you. And even as you start going into the 7 energy bodies, what they're connected to. And that's when gods really starts getting interesting, tricky. It's connected to something else, too. And so, what do we have? This is no different than the normal basic idea of electricity. You have something over here and you have something over there, and you get a current to go between them. So you have to join up this current, because inside your human body you can have this threading, and ideally it is even, which means that if it's 10 units over here, it's 10 units over here. And those continue evenly throughout all of the connections through the entire body. Not 10 here, 25 here, 5 here, 17 there, and so on. So to thread something means that the motion of chi between points along it is even. Now, in terms of gods in meditation, this becomes really important for one reason. This is how you, how your one mind, your one consciousness, your one of whatever of these various things people like to words people like to use, from function become millions of consciousnesses, conscious of this and conscious of that. But the consciousness itself is only one thing. And the ability to have that consciousness run through you in a very, very connected, smooth fashion is what you want. When it doesn't, it also reflects in messing up the chi flow inside your body and fractionating that. The two are bound together. It's like it's not like they're different. You could say they are different if you wanted to, but from the other side you could also consider them not different at all. They are all part of the same thing. So what you're looking for when you're doing gods is threading, and it is a big subject. Now, we're going to start by doing something with the arms, which is more simple, because if we don't find a way to feel and understand it, you're not going to understand it otherwise. So I'm going to give you a little threading exercise. So you don't have to stand up for these today. So between the tip of your finger and your palm, what are the major thread points? And we would consider them to be knuckle, knuckle, and knuckle. So there are 3 knuckles in the fingers. Now, understand something about that. If it were just completely with your finger extended in a straight line, probably wouldn't be so hard to do. But your finger can bend all over the place. So your wrist can bend all over the place. But it doesn't matter if the finger, wrist, or elbow bends in any directions, there still needs to be a thread. You can think of it in, you can't think of it in simply a linear way. Now what I want you to try is to pulse the tip of your finger. Get the blood coming in from the tip of your finger and going back out. And just that first joint, just getting it to pulse. But then the question is, from the tip of the third knuckle way down, where can it break up? So for a moment, see if you can pulse all the way from the tip of your finger down to the third knuckle. And is it the same all the way through? Is it smooth all the way through? So you've just got to have very real sense of your energy going to your fingertip and coming back. Because the thread moves in both directions. And then you feel just in the middle. Is it going through the middle of your finger smoothly? Or does it actually have a big surge somewhere and then get weaker? And so one of the things is that you're not trying to pulse very hard, but you want to pulse very lightly, till you actually can recognize what that thread through the center of your finger is. Because that thread, when it goes down the center of the knuckle, has to go right through the center of the knuckle. Could it surge easily and end up on the other side, top or bottom? Sure. Wouldn't be difficult at all. So you just need to get it to where it's very, very even. One of the things is that you don't want to make it surge. Kick it through if there's a blockage, or it gets slowed down. It needs to be very steady, because within that thread, through chi, you can regulate the voltage like a dimmer switch. You could make it be just 5 or 500 and still be going through the same thread. But if you get surges, you will cap how much you can increase. Because when it surges, that becomes the blocked point which you can't get through. And no matter how difficult this is in your finger, it's going to be much, much more difficult in the feet, in the toes. And that's because your legs and feet are much harder because they have been compressed by walking through your whole life. So now, go back to thinking about just the first joint. Can you just feel that thread go through from the tip of the finger to the first joint? And then add going to the second knuckle. If it surges, what you want to do is just to very lightly pulse to help make it even until you can get a sense of what it's like for this to be even. And then go all the way through the finger and really feel what's happening with that chi. Is it smooth and even all the way through and right through the center of each knuckle? So you want to just do this with each of your 5 fingers, which is the easiest place in the body to do this. And you don't want to go on to the hand and wrist until you can do those fingers, until each of them feels smooth. And it's really kind of important to go very step by step progressively, because otherwise some of the harder places in the body will be less cooperative. But if you can really get the sense in your fingers, then it begins to be easier to do it in the hand, the wrist, the elbow, the shoulder, the scapula, and eventually the spine, and then the feet. So one of the things here is if you have a surge or a decline of the flow of the qi, this is very much related to the principle in Chinese medicine of excess and deficiency. That's really what we're returning to. It's very easy to lose it, and that's why I want you to practice this until finally you can keep track of the whole thing by yourself. So, what did you feel in your finger?
I'm certainly feeling something. I'm not sure is what I'm, quote, supposed to be feeling or not, which is so common in Tai Chi for me. I would, what I was wondering about is the relationship of this to pointing, because it does feel similar.
You mean lengthening?
Uh, Rick's pointing.
Oh, extending.
Yeah.
So really of course, Rick's pointing, which is, we know, is very effective and very easy, is certainly related to this.
Yeah.
But there, with the pointing, you're using your intent to extend the energy,
Mm,
and not necessarily thinking about it coming back into
right.
the body.
Yeah.
But you are feeling the flow.
Okay.
So clearly, it is very related to threading, because if that flow of the energy is not steady and even throughout the body, then you won't make the connection as strongly, certainly, with that concept of pointing,
Mm-hmm.
as you're referring to it. Which has a very, it's interesting because if you remember, one of the early exercises with that was to realize that if you could really feel your finger going out and connecting to something across
Mm-hmm.
the room or wherever, that your arm became very strong.
Yeah.
It was hard to be pushed down. But if you thought about your finger, you had nothing.
Right. Wiped it out immediately.
Wiped it out immediately. So um, I think this is partially related. I've mentioned this because you said what you ought to be feeling. Because if you're thinking about what you ought to feel, then you aren't
Yeah. Yeah.
feeling. So that's an interesting thing, that that uh, you you need to be aware of it and feel it, but not think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly the two concepts are related.
Okay.
Interesting, a good question. Um, so you can also do this with your toes. I do suggest that you work with the fingers first, but if you feel that you're getting a reasonably good flow through all 5 of your fingers, then you could also uh, then begin to play with your toes. The thing about the toes is that you really need to begin with the big toe. As a matter of fact, you need to do a certain sequence with the toes. You need to do the big toe, the little toe, and then you can do the 3 in the middle in whatever order you like. But if you don't do the toes in that order, it's very hard to get them all to open up evenly. And I don't know why. I can't tell you that, but
That was my question.
no. Um, I think the only thing that Bruce ever said about that was that the big toe was the easiest to do because it had only 2 knuckles instead of 3, and that he, there, he couldn't give you a particular reason why, except that doing them in that sequence had been found by experience to be the easiest way to do it. So playing with the toes is really interesting, but you really need to start with the big toe. And I'm not going to suggest that we do that today, because I think that you need to work with the fingers. But one of the things to be aware of is that another thing you can do if you're finding that you're having difficulty getting the energy to move through either fingers or toes is to actually physically push or pull the fingers or toes slightly. And one of the things that is a little difficult intellectually, because your mind says, no, that's not the right thing, is that when you're talking about pushing the energy, then you're talking about actually what seems like a pulling motion, but the energy pushes out and pulls in. And the reason why basically we think about it in that relationship is because that's what gravity does to the body. So in other words, when you're sending the energy down, you're pushing it down, and it's going in this direction. So conceptually, that's maybe a little difficult to twist the mind around, but that's what you're really doing is, if you find that you have a real blockage or you cannot get rid of a surge or decline in the flow, is to use those movements of very gently pulling and pushing the joint, and that can help open it up so that the energy moves through more freely. Just a kind of a good technique that can be helpful when you find that you've hit a blockage. Getting there is one section that I don't think I really need to go into at the moment, but it will be in the notes, about denial in doing this. So in other words, am I feeling or not? It's worth reading. I don't know that either of you are particularly inclined to deny that you're feeling something in this or not. One of the things that if you can get the threading to be very effective through, particularly through the entire body, but through the legs and the hips, is that it can be enormously helpful for sciatica. It's really kind of interesting that that which is not not often relieved very easily can be really helped. Excuse me, let me just find what I wanted to say here. So, it actually can help repair the damage to the nerves of the toes. It can help to get rid of the vertebra squeezing down and causing the nerve signals to get blocked to begin with. And the third thing that it can help in sciatica is actually to be able to get the blood vessels that are down along the area where you're having sciatica, which for some reason have become traumatized, to become untraumatized. So it is, interestingly enough, threading is one of the ways that you can actually treat sciatica. There's a side note.
Well, I'll sign up for that. But,
Go ahead.
as I'm doing this, when you start out focusing on one finger, and the way that I would describe the sensation that I'm getting when I do that is I had a surge. It felt like a surge going out to the end of all my fingers.
Uh-huh.
And the closest thing I can think of to describe it is, like a gentle wave lapping up on a beach. And then coming back in was not particularly energetic, but it was more like the absence of, like the receding of that wave. It would sort of seep in without a particular destination because there's so many places to go back to. But as opposed to a small area to go up to when it's going out. And I don't know if I'm missing part of the point here.
Well, one of the things that's interesting because there is Bruce did make a point of saying, because the question came up, that a number of people felt other things going on when they were focusing on a finger or a toe specifically. And his response was, let them go. Don't get involved with anything else other than the part that you are focused on. So, yes, it will cause reactions elsewhere in the body, and maybe just in the related fingers or toes or somewhere else. But don't let yourself get sidetracked into those. Stick with just the single area that you're trying to focus on, because you want to develop the ability to get your intent to be that specific. And ideally the flow should be fairly much the same going out and in. Because if not, then that indicates somehow it's getting blocked in one way or another. Either you're getting a surge going out, which is kind of what it sounded like you were describing, or it's being limited or declined coming in. And so it's not even. And so, yeah, you would want to try to get that to be more even, both going out and in.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's the awareness of it going out. It seems to concentrate, right out here.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it goes in, because it's going into a bigger area, the sensation is less because it's dissipated over a much wider area, going on down. So,
But
yeah.
So you want to simply focus just on that section from the tip to the first knuckle.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let yourself be distracted by whatever is happening elsewhere. So it can be absolutely smooth and even both directions just in that section. And then when that is smooth, then you would go to the next knuckle. And then the next when that's smooth.
Okay.
Did that help, Bill?
Like a lot of these things, I think it's slightly beyond words.
Well, it is slightly beyond words.
Yeah.
I can feel it, but I can't. How do I describe that? It's but whatever you feel, you feel.
Yeah, right. You're right. I get a fullness right at the end, and then it's more like it's the absence of a fullness rather than a.
Since that seems to be fairly consistent for you at the moment, one of the things you might do is just very gently push and pull that area when you're doing it, so that you see if that helps to get the flow in even with the flow out. And that's really just physically beginning to replicate the pulsing, the opening and closing. And when you're just working with that first area, you're quite right, primarily working with the gate at the tip of the finger. We're not really talking so much about that first knuckle joint yet. But when you go to the second knuckle, and you're going through that first knuckle, that may change it. But you try to be specific about what you're intending there and have it just move through that section so that you can really feel what's happening through there. is it going through the middle of the joint? And is it going through the middle of the joint smoothly, or does something else happen? And so maybe, I mean, a little hard for me to tell, but also what it could be is that things are pretty open going out, but coming back in, maybe that first knuckle is declining, is closing down.
Are we kind of embroidering or enriching, extending out and extending in with this?
Sure.
That's what it feels like. We're talking about just a little, some more emphasis on the energetic activity that's going on in parallel with extending out and extending in.
With that and with lengthening,
Yeah.
this is getting more specific with those. Absolutely. Because that is what's happening when you extend out. Ideally, the energy of all of the fingers is extending out simultaneously, evenly. Every joint open. And then when it comes back in, it's coming in evenly through all the joints and all the fingers simultaneously. So that's what you're endeavoring to feel, to reach.
It's funny that just doing that with my whole hand, I'm getting that sense better than if I'm doing it with the end of my finger, where I get this surge that just sort of soaks back in.
Yeah. Oh, I like it. Yeah, the problem is that we want to be able to do both. And threading could be pretty frustrating. Breaking it down like this and really trying to be specific joint by joint. So it's a very meditative practice. What I think the result ultimately is that you can feel a fuller flow of the energy through everything. You may already have, indeed, the energy is flowing through everything, or you wouldn't be functioning. So neither of you seems to have a serious blockage that's preventing you from moving. But what threading does is increase and open up beyond what we normally would have. So you could play with it. So, any last minute thoughts or questions? All right. Well, have fun with this if you like. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Very good.
Hopefully we'll have Joanne or Adam back with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Have a great week.
You
Okay,
also.
too. Yep. See you, Bill.
See you, Bill. Bye.
Bye.